So much of the data just rests on this one machine, and it's very unlikely, unless somebody goes in re-engineering, that all the effort that has put in there is ever going to benefit anybody else. So we really try to stress the point that the software development, and also, if possible, the data formats should be open source and open access, so that it's possible to reuse it afterwards. I mean, even if, please don't look at the code we write and use, but at least it's in Subversion, and it looks ugly, but it works for us. And somebody else could get it running if you really try to. So those were the examples, and I tried to mention already some of the points pertaining to that. So, well, another point on the copyright, did not mention so much yet. But the thing is that, at least for historical sources, it seems to be easy because copyright runs 70 years after the death of the original author. And most of the authors we were talking about from 19th century, it's quite about okay. For cuneiform tablets, of course, there's no problem at all. And we have a big section also on early modern texts from 14th to 17th century. All these authors are dead, but still there's issues because the museums and the collections and the libraries that own these books, I mean, I find it always problematic to say they really own it, because they're official institutions and somebody just gave it to them for keeping and for making accessible, preserving and making accessible to everybody. And now they say, well, we own this, and if you want to use it, then you have to pay us. And this gets, well, with books, it's currently rather easy. So if you can try to buy a copy of the book, of the original book, you can scan it yourself and just put the images out because you're the one that has it. If you have to lend it from somewhere else, you expressly, of course, you have to ask them to give you the rights to scan it and to use the images in public, which with books at about works okay, but it's really problematic in the areas where works of art, paintings, other stuff is involved. So for scholars in history of arts, it is really problematic, because there the museums really do not want to give out the rights, and they, for large part, if they hear you're putting it out on the internet, most of the time they do not have any scheme, because they say, well, if it's printed so and so often, you pay so and so much. But if you say, well, I put it out on the internet, everybody can download it, then they say, well, how many people is that? And $5 each. You say, well, millions? No. And so this is really a problem for them. For example, there was photography, I think a French photography journal, which exists in printed form, and they also wanted to put it up in the internet. And they could put up all the texts, but they could not put up the photographs. And so they said, yeah, there's no point doing that, and they took it all down. So this is really a shame. It seems that there's some movement, maybe making it easier, at least for research uses, whereas the problem is, well, how do you check that? And that, so the Victoria and Albert Museum in London is at least making it easier to grant permissions to use images and have a very low fee or being free. But there's other museums, especially for also very small museums, where they say, yeah, our funds get cut, we don't have so much money, we try to make money by selling the images. We cannot just give that out since it seems to be valuable. But as a researcher, you have to say, well, nobody else even knows that these images are there. So it would even be beneficial for them to be out in the internet, and so other people knew that it was there and maybe came there and did that. But this mindset is not so well developed. Although sometimes there's deals. There's one deal with about Islamic manuscripts, where we have scholars working on the Islamic manuscripts, and they came to the library, the Staatsbibliothek in Berlin, and they said, well, we will do the cataloging for you, because you have these manuscripts, but you don't know what's written in them. And we can tell you that, and therefore, and in exchange, you give us the rights to put up the images on the internet, and we will link you with that, and you can use the catalog information. And that seems to come off very well. So I think it's also a problem of awareness and business models in this day and age. Well, a small other point that I at least just wanted to brush on is open access to current work, so the work that the scientists themselves, so most of the other talk was about the sources, the work that the scientists themselves are writing. And as Michael put up in his talk a lot about blogs and putting up texts and thoughts in the internet. I mean, most of the humanities scholars are not that far on yet on modern media. I mean, mostly we're happy when they already know what the internet is and can use their mail and are aware that there's possibilities, but also there's the problems of publishing structure, because there's, in the humanities mostly, there are not the big journals and preprint servers and other stuff, so there's not an established culture of sharing little bits of information about each other and reading a lot of it. But there's rather, you research on something for some years and then you write a monography, so a big book. And then that book gets published. And currently there are no models to really, well, at least no very good models to really put that up with a free access model in the internet. So also there are differences in mindset and culture in that from the model the physicists are using. I tell them, well, yeah, I mean, in physics they always have the preprint server, everybody just reads the preprints, they get printed, maybe not, but then it's already late, and so that works very well for the physicists, but in the humanities it's more difficult so far. And also it's more difficult because the problem of peer recognition, so the scholars, young scholars, doctorates, postdocs, they say, well, I could put a lot of work into doing these online projects, putting in the catalog, the material, information, but what reward am I getting? When I'm up for a tenure position and the tenure committee comes and I can tell them, well, I did that and that much work in this electronic project, and they will say, huh? And if I have not published books and maybe articles, but mostly books, then it will be problematic. And so if I value my time and I want to pursue that career, then I really have to go to the old ways of publishing. So also, maybe, well, we hope that at least in time this will change, but there are lots of